I'm Trish Tagley, Executive Coach and Life Coach, and this is Trish Time. And today we have Dr. Matt Frye from the New York State IPM program. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Trish.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good.
Great.
Thank you very much for being on the show and for talking about coming on here and talking about this very important topic. Let's start with you telling our viewers a little bit about your background and how you came to this program.
Sure. Well, I went to graduate school to study plant and insect interactions. I studied biological control, which is using populations of organisms to control pest populations. And it was interesting work, but I found myself being alone a lot of the time, as a researcher would, out in the field. And so the pest management industry has always appealed to me. My father worked for a pest management company when I was a child, and so I wanted to explore that avenue, and it's been very rewarding for me to work in the pest management industry.
And so, and within Westchester, you do have a space with the Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Yes, we have a great partnership. My program is a statewide extension of Cornell, and we work with all of the counties, but I am fortunate to be housed in the Westchester County office. Having grown up in Westchester County, it's really great for me to be back home and be able to contribute back to the community.
And with regard to your work in the county and in the town of Greenburgh, there's an integrated pest management program. Would you like to talk about that? Like, what is it that you do with the different pest control businesses here?
Sure. So as a state agency, we work with all the counties, but being stationed in Westchester, I work with the Westchester County Pest Management Committee, and I also do a lot of education for local pest management companies. And that's sort of the main area of my emphasis, is to provide education not only to the pest management companies, but also to homeowners and other organizations that may be dealing with pest problems. So there are agencies within the county that have experienced bedbug problems, for example, whether it's visitors that come in and accidentally bring bedbugs on themselves, or individuals that visit homes as part of a nurse agency or other organization. We provide training so that they can reduce their risk of being exposed to bedbugs. And a lot of the work that we do with the pest management industry is to provide them with the information to accurately identify a pest. And that really gives them all the information that they'll need to manage them. Because if you understand its biology and what it requires to survive, then you can target that and use that information rather than just using pesticides only.
And also, I believe that certain insects might look like other insects. So there's a whole education piece around that with regard to saying, no, this is not a bed bug, it just looks like one.
Very true. There's so many insects very similar in appearance, and if you don't take the time to look at them closely, you could easily mistake them. And one of the trainings that I often do right at the beginning of a presentation is to have people distinguish between a tick and a bed bug, because both of those organisms can be found on a bed, but the treatment would be very different if you had a tick versus a bed bug, because a bed bug is living on or near the bed and trying to suck your blood every 3 to 5 days.
Yay!
Exactly. Whereas a tick may come in on you or on a pet and be have dropped off and then looking for a place to hide. They won't typically survive in a bedroom, but it's really important to distinguish between those two types of organisms.
So with regard to that, like you mentioned, okay, and let's just clarify for the viewers, okay, a tick on a bed will not survive, whereas a bed bug, that's naturally where they will survive and reproduce, and that's why it's a problem.
Bedbugs want to be as close to their host as possible, and unfortunately for humans, we are the host. So they want to be in a crack or crevice where they're hidden, protected from the air, because too much dryness can actually kill them. So they want to be in those cracks and crevices, whereas most tick species, the black-legged tick, the Lone Star tick, and the American dog tick, if they are in a home, they won't survive. There is a species of tick that's common throughout the country, the brown dog tick, which can actually complete its entire life cycle indoors, which is terrifying. Okay, they are typically found in kennels associated with dogs, but they can be found in homes and infesting homes. So again, even though a tick is identified, we have to ask the pest professional to know which species, because even then there could be a whole different treatment.
Yes. So with regard, just switching back to the bed bugs for a moment, what are the different ways of prevention? One that I've heard is about putting little plastic cups of talcum powder under the legs of your bed. But tell me, how would you prevent bed bugs from infesting your mattress? And
it's a great question, and I think it's something that everybody should be aware of bed bugs, because if you leave your home, or if you live in a multifamily house, you don't even have to leave your home to get bed bugs. They can be everywhere. So we have to be vigilant in how we behave. And our behavior is the first step in preventing a bed bug infestation. So if we're traveling on public transportation, if we're staying in a hotel, we want to take measures to isolate our items so that we're not exposing them to bed bugs. So when traveling, we don't want to put our items on the bed, because if there's bed bugs on the bed, they might come out looking for a blood meal and accidentally find themselves hiding on your luggage. And so that's how we bring them home. So those sorts of behaviors are things that we could do to prevent from bringing them home. If we are dealing with an infestation at home, there are a number of things that we can do to reduce the population and eliminate small populations. The cups under the bed, that's a great technique. They are actually manufactured now. They have several different varieties of what are called interceptor devices. They're put under the legs of beds and furniture, and they work as a pitfall trap. So a bed bug will climb up, and because they can't climb smooth surfaces, they fall into a well, and then they can't get out. So the talcum powder in some of those devices actually prevents them from climbing out. That's a great step. And then we also advocate that people use mattress encasements. One of the first things that people do in response to finding bed bugs is throw away their mattress or their box spring, which is often not necessary, and it's also a very expensive mistake. If you have bed bugs at home and you throw out your mattress and then get a new one, and you haven't dealt with the bed bugs, chances are that one will be reinfested. So you can purchase a mattress encasement to surround the mattress and the box spring. It eliminates all the hiding places for bed bugs, and they're white, so they're easy to inspect. Another technique in preventing bed bugs from finding you when you're on the bed is to pull the bed away from the wall and keep blankets and things off the floor, because anything that sort of touches the bed can serve as a bridge. And I see you scratching.
Yes.
It's the reaction most people have when I talk to them.
I thoroughly enjoy this topic. So, okay, go. Sorry about that, but go move forward.
Of course.
Okay.
So those are techniques. We call this technique making your bed an island. Essentially, those three things will help to prevent bed bugs from finding you when you're sleeping, which we think is one of the most important steps, because if you're not being bitten while you're sleeping, then at least you have that sanctity of your bedroom. There are other techniques that can be used within the home. Regular vacuuming has been shown to pick up bed bugs that are walking around, especially if you discard the contents immediately and outside. You can actually, another interesting technique that's been used is to put knee-high stockings in the hose of the vacuum, so that as you're sucking up the bed bugs, they get stuck in the stocking, and then you can throw that out rather than infesting your vacuum cleaner.
Because one might get stuck in there and somehow crawl out when it's off.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then you haven't solved the problem.
We don't want that.
No.
So moving on, we'll move on to ticks.
Okay.
Because you did bring that up.
Yes.
And that is an issue here in Westchester because we do have deer, and because we're, I would say, encroaching on their space as we're building more and more homes, they're coming into our lawns. So, ticks. Matt, tell us about ticks.
Sure. Well, ticks, of course, are another blood-feeding ectoparasite, just like bed bugs. We are not their primary host. Actually, deer are a terrific host for ticks, but the deer are really the reproductive host for ticks. So one of the big concerns with this species is Lyme disease. But the deer actually don't play a huge part in giving ticks Lyme disease. They are important in increasing the number of ticks. It's estimated that each adult deer can produce 1.5 million ticks. So just think of all the deer that we have in Westchester. We have a huge population. It's estimated that it should be 6 to 8 deer per acre, and we have over 40 in some areas. So we have a deer problem. But the real host that's a problem are the small mammals. So white-footed mice and chipmunks, among others, but they're the ones that ticks feed on and actually acquire Lyme disease and acquire the other pathogens. And then when they feed on a human, that's when we get Lyme disease.
Oh, when the tick feeds on a human.
Right.
I was like, when a chipmunk feeds on a human?
They're not typically blood feeders.
No, but if you have chipmunks or white mice, they could have the tick, which then might transfer onto you.
Right.
And then that's, if you don't find it in time.
Correct.
Then
so
you would have the Lyme disease.
We absolutely advocate daily tick checks. There are a number of things that you can do to sort of make your yard less hospitable to ticks, but given everything that you can do, the best thing that you can do to reduce your chance of being exposed to tick-borne disease is a daily tick check. And the way we communicate this to people is to say they should know every freckle on their body, because it's your body. You should be able to look at it and know what was there the day before and what wasn't. So if we do daily tick checks and make sure that there's no freckles that have legs, then our chances of picking up a tick-borne disease are reduced.
Oh, wait. Okay, you just said ticks, freckles without legs. But the way ticks grab onto you, okay, granted, you should know whether it was there the day before or not, because it's a tick is not too tiny not to notice. But the way they hook on sometimes, you don't see the legs.
So the way that deer ticks attach, and most ticks, is that they will crawl around and then stick their mouth parts into you. And they actually cement their mouth parts into your skin. So what holds them there is their mouth. So they typically are at an angle to your body. And they do have their little legs
out.
That are out.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, okay. That's great. But what happens? I mean, I guess if you live by yourself and the tick is on your back,
difficult to see.
It's a little bit like,
it's not something you want to do in public,
no.
using a mirror and checking yourself out.
Or asking somebody on the bus, hey, by the way.
So it can be difficult, especially if I don't have my glasses on, I can't tell what's on my back. So a buddy system would be great.
Yeah, I suppose. And I mean, I guess, too, if you've been outside. I mean, obviously, if you're indoors, not really in an area where there's deer.
Right.
Then, but if you've gone hiking or you've done extensive gardening for the day, when you're doing activities that, bring you outdoors, that's when you should be more vigilant about doing tick checks.
And the reality is that if you do a tick check every day, let's say, for example, you were out on a Saturday and you picked up a tick, but it was a nymphal tick and it was small and it attached to you and you couldn't see it. But if you check every day, you would see that tick expand as it filled with blood.
Yes.
So that's that's why we recommend every day, because if you miss it one day, then you might pick it up in subsequent days. They may be attached for 3 to 5 days in order to complete their blood meal. So you want to detect them as fast as possible. For Lyme disease, you want to find them within 16 hours of their attachment. But if you find something attached, then you can speak to your physician about it, and they can help you decide.
Quickly. Yeah. So, okay, the other larger issue, especially nowadays, mosquitoes and the Zika virus.
Yes.
So,
well, Westchester County has a great plan in place to address the mosquito problem from the public health perspective on the broad scale of Westchester County. So we have confidence in their plan, but the thing is that every individual can actually contribute to reducing mosquito problems. And to me, that's empowering, because I know that on my property and in my neighbor's property, if I can reduce mosquito breeding, then that may prevent mosquitoes in the entire area. They don't travel very far from where they breed, but the species of mosquitoes that can transmit Zika virus, that can transmit dengue and chikungunya, are container breeders. So even a bottle cap can hold enough water for them to reproduce. So if people went out into their yards and looked at bird baths or looked at trash such as bottle caps and things that were on the ground collecting water, those should be emptied, especially this time of year, because in the spring is when their populations are starting to develop. You would find the larval mosquitoes in those little containers, and if you dump it out, that's it. The problem is solved. But if you let them complete their life cycle, that's when the adult mosquito can emerge. And the same thing as with ticks. If the adult mosquito feeds on a host that has one of those viruses, then the next host can be exposed to it.
So in Westchester, do you know, have there been any reports of Zika in Westchester so far?
None that have been locally acquired. And a locally acquired case is what I was just mentioning, where the mosquito picked up the pathogen from someone in the area and transmitted it to another person. That has not happened. The most cases in the United States where Zika has been found, it's been people coming back from areas where they were exposed. So the tropics are the key area right now where people are returning to the United States and then having these pathogens.
Okay, and then this is a rather serious issue that I'm going to bring up, but I just read recently that they're advising people in certain areas of the world not to have children because I guess they've acquired the virus, and the virus creates birth defects. So this is not just, oh, you have a virus and wait for it to go away.
Right.
This is something that's actually may affect in the future world population, simply because if the government's going to say you can't have children. I mean, I don't know how they can really say that, but at the same time, you're risking having a child with a birth defect if you go ahead and reproduce knowing that you've had this virus.
Right, and the scary thing too is that not only can a woman just be exposed herself, but it's been suggested that it's sexually transmitted. So if a man travels and acquires Zika virus and then they get pregnant, then it's possible that the virus is transmitted as well. And so
now it's not just a woman problem, it's also
right.
Oh, wow.
Right. So they're, of course, suggesting contraceptives for men that have traveled. They might have a time frame to know now, after you return, how much time you have before the risk is over. If you're infected, it's not a lifelong infection for an adult, but the birth defects, of course, would be a lifelong result. So certainly, if you know that risk is possible, you would want to avoid the risk of being pregnant and traveling to one of those areas. So
this is really more serious. I mean, not to say that dengue isn't isn't a serious issue, because it is. And knowing in like Southeast Asia, we didn't really hear much of this, and then all of a sudden now you're hearing more and more about it, and more people being in the hospital because of it. So this seems to be a lot more serious than, not to say those aren't, but this Zika virus seems to be a lot more serious.
It is serious because of the birth defects that can result. It seems to me that there's a lot more opportunities for prevention of Zika virus as well. And in our area, the risk seems lower than some other areas of the country, so there is comfort in that. Certainly, the further south you go, there's 2 species of mosquito in Florida, New Orleans, those locations. So the chance of acquiring pathogens is higher. As someone that lives in Westchester, my biggest fear is tick-borne disease. We know that every year an estimated 300,000 people get Lyme disease. Oh, wow. Which affects everybody. And it can have not only the immediate effects, but it can have long-term effects that we're still not even fully understanding at this point, in terms of mental disabilities and joints and other parts of our system. So in Westchester, I think ticks are the biggest threat right now.
So you did bring in some sort of specimens.
I did bring in specimens. So these may be difficult to see, but we have a number of arthropods here that can bite people. Well, actually, so 5 of these containers include organisms that can bite people, and 3 of these containers contain ticks. Okay. So this is one of my test boxes that I like to bring to our programs, because I want the pest professionals to distinguish between these different organisms. And when you look at them, it may be difficult to tell the difference, but even with slight magnification, you'd be able to tell that the ones with the cap facing down are all ticks. These are bed bugs. These are fleas. And this is the ringer. This is a carpet beetle larva, which people find all the time, but is not a biting insect and does not have any human health impact, really. They may cause allergens if they're found in a bedroom. So that's our biting organisms. We also have some big and juicy pinned specimens. And so, again, the reason I wanted to bring these is to say that this entire top row and these 4 on the bottom are all considered to be stinging insects that may affect people. But they all have very different biologies, and they all nest in different locations, and they all have different behaviors. So something like the male carpenter bee looks very intimidating, but cannot sting and harasses people. That's its entire scare tactic, is it just harasses people. But it looks very similar to a bumblebee, which can sting people, and a female carpenter bee, which can also sting people, but is unlikely to. So again, I bring all these lovely specimens just to emphasize the point that identification is the key to effective pest management, because in a lot of cases we may not even need to do anything if it's not really a stinging threat or risk.
Absolutely. So these are the specimens that you bring to show the professionals and ask them to identify which ones are stinging, which ones are not, which ones, like this one's a stink bug.
That is a stink bug. So these 3, all the way on the bottom right here, are what we call overwintering pests. They come inside in the wintertime and just hang out. They don't do any structural damage. They don't feed on your plants. They don't do anything in the home. The introduced stink bug, the brown marmorated stink bug, the multicolored Asian ladybird beetle, it's a mouthful, and the box elder bug all have the same biology.
Oh my goodness. Well, We've come to the end of our program, so thank you very much, Matt, for being here and bringing your friends and talking to us about the different pests in Westchester and Greenburgh. And for our viewers, if you've wanted to work on pest management in your home, or you think you have a pest management problem and you haven't been able to get to it, please, there's a URL at the bottom of your screen. Please go there and download the form, and maybe it'll help you decide to take some action and what those actions will be, either working on it yourself or calling a professional. Again, this has been Trish Time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much, Matt, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.